Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viewers around wherever you are. Welcome to this first edition of Vinyl Countdown, broadcasting live from the nether reaches of Faversham. My name's Dan Harding. I'm head of music performance here at the University of Kent. And this afternoon is an opportunity for guests to come into the virtual studio and share their passions for their favourite album with you, the viewer. And the idea is that they will enthuse you to the point where you are encouraged to vote for them. We very much encourage viewers, by all means, do vote. You keep your comments coming in. We'll draw them up. It'd be nice to get your feedback while we're live. And the idea is that by the end of the show, we'll have got enough votes to have a rough count of, during the live hour, or however long it is, how many people have voted and who's a potential winner whilst we're here in the studio. And then an hour afterwards, we'll do a final tally and we'll post the results. So after about 4 o'clock, please make sure you don't vote. Otherwise, your votes won't be counted and you may be charged. In a nod to Strictly Come Dancing. So anyway, let's one by one, let's bring into the studio the guests who will be competing for your votes. And first up is Amy. Welcome, Amy.
Hi. Hi.
Nice
how are you?
to see you. We've lured you away from your drama and literature studies in order to come and take part. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. On my coffee break.
Fantastic. And broadcasting live all the way from Bath. It's nice to see you. Good. Thank you for coming aboard. Next into the studio, we have Mr. President of the Music Society, Mr. David Curtis.
Hello.
Welcome, David.
How's it going?
Good. And you're coming from the command bunker deep in darkest Hampshire, is that right?
I am indeed. Yeah, with wonderful Wi-Fi included as well. That's all.
Fantastic. And so again, we have prized you away from the clutches of your academic course studying. Now I have to get this right because it's very long. Astrophysics, space science, and something else to do with physics.
Yeah, astronomy.
Astronomy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So yes, you're going to enthuse us shortly with your album of choice to get viewers to vote for it. So thank you for participating and welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
And also into the studio, please give a warm virtual welcome, which of course we won't hear, but I'm sure it will be a standing ovation all the way around the country, to our very own Sophie Meikle. Sophie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Broadcasting now, you're live from the rural outskirts of Canterbury, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, I'm all the way down in lovely snowy Peckham.
Yes, and have you been snowed in? This is the crucial burning issue. Not what record have you chosen, but are you snowed in?
Yeah, snow day.
Fantastic. Good. Our final guest is Carmen, but she is coming hot foot from a drama session, which finishes around 2 o'clock. So she will be here and I'll introduce her into the studio when she comes. But without further ado, let's crack on. Each of our guests will have the floor for a short while, and in order to enthuse you, the viewers at home, viewers watching, with their comments and suggestions and what it is about the album that's important to them, why they've chosen it, what it means. So by all means, do make sure that you vote for them. And at the end of the show, we will see who wins. So let's kick off then by asking Amy. Amy, do step forward. This is your soapbox moment to enthuse us. Tell us about the album you've chosen, and tell us why it's important to you.
Yeah, so my album of choice is Queen's A Night at the Opera, their 1975 album. Yeah, when I was thinking about this competition, I was trying to decide which album was the best to choose, and I really struggled to find an album which I liked the whole of, and I think it comes down to how much thought goes into what your album's going to sound like and what constitutes it. And I think this is probably partly down to the fact that nowadays you can skip songs so easily, so you don't need to kind of create this concept album or put too much thought into how it all hangs together and how the sounds work together. So I ended up choosing A Night at the Opera. Queen one of my favorite bands. It kind of went from the Beatles to Queen. So when I was, I don't know, 9, 10, I had my little MP3 player, my pink MP3 player, which had the capacity of 50 songs, and every song was a Queen song. Not many were from this album, actually. This was a later discovery, which I was very happy to discover because it's an amazing album. It like brings together metal and kind of rock opera and jazz, kind of British nostalgia. Yeah, beautifully, and it fits together so well. It also has kind of 2 epic songs on it. It has, of course, Bohemian Rhapsody near the end, which, you know, everybody knows. And it also has the lesser known Prophets song, which I used to think was like the kind of underdog version, because it's like just as epic, and they kind of play around with loads of effects and looping, and it's a great experience. So I'd really, really recommend listening to the album the whole way through, not on shuffle. And yeah, and it's a lot of why I think I like Queen is because so many of the songs are written by the separate members and they're brought together, and it's the mix of all of their different tastes and sounds. So I'm in Love With My Car is the drummer's edition, Roger Taylor, and then Prophet Song is Brian May, and Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, is Freddie Mercury's edition. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful album, really recommend it, and it is one of the kind of big canonical, it was their key to success. They were like, you know, not earning much money at the time. This really kicked off the band and kicked off a lot in British rock and prog rock and experimental music. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. Of course, I'm resolutely impartial as I am, being simply the host. I couldn't help myself nodding vigorously when you started talking about the prog rock. I was thinking, cha-ching, yes, that ticks my... But of course, I will be remaining resolutely impartial throughout the entire show. So viewers, fear not, fear not. You know, due process will be observed. Can I please take this opportunity to welcome Carmen into the studio? Carmen, hello. Nice to see you.
Hello. Hiya.
Hot-footing. I was just explaining to the viewers before you arrived that you were hot-footing it from a drama session, so hopefully you've made it in time and are in one piece.
Just about, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. So yes, thank you to Amy and their enthusing viewers with the idea of voting for Queen's A Night at the Opera, the influential rock opera album, as their album of choice. So it remains to be seen, Amy, whether you can persuade people. So let's move now to the command bunker down in Hampshire, David. So we'll bring David into Speaker's Corner, as it were. So okay. David, you have the floor. Share with the viewers, persuade them why they should be voting. Tell us what your album is and why they should be voting for it.
Will do. Hopefully the Wi-Fi keeps up for the next minute or so. So my album is Djesse Volume 3 by Jacob Collier. So it's difficult to explain the album without having the background behind Jacob Collier, because he's sort of this crazy impressive musician who sort of crept through fairly unnoticed, I think, apart from a few. So he started making these videos on YouTube of just him harmonizing with himself. And then Quincy Jones saw it and decided, yeah, that's great, I'll manage him. So over the past, I think it's sort of 7-8 years, they've been working together, and he's decided to go on this quest of creating this universe called the Djesse universe. And this is the 3rd installment. I think it's an awesome album, and it sort of has loads of different angles for whoever's listening to it. Sort of goes through hip hop and R&B and soul and funk and a bit of pop. And I think the whole album works so well, like as an arc. It sort of explodes in and has like a weird epilogue at the beginning, which I really like. And yeah, it just has loads of like corners to listen to for hours. I think it's brilliant. Yeah. Had anyone else actually heard of Jacob Collier out of you guys?
Yeah. I actually
hadn't listened to. Sorry.
really, really disliked him when I first heard of him.
I think I remember you saying to me.
Too much going on.
Yeah.
But I had a little listen to a few tracks, and it sounds very interesting. Definitely need to sit down and listen to it in order.
Yeah, I'd recommend listening to like all the volume 1 and volume 2 as well, just for progression. Because I like motifs that come back and forward. Another great thing about the album is that if you go onto his YouTube channel, he actually goes through the Logic sessions that he creates for it. So it's all done on Logic of just him sat in his room. And you can actually, he explains the process of his creation, which is like fascinating and
really cool.
Something you wouldn't normally get from different artists. So yeah, if no one's seen it, do go and give it a watch because it is really brilliant. Yeah.
Because he is something of a sort of creative tour de force, isn't he? I remember watching, was it the year before last? I think he did a late night prom that was televised. And he was there.
I was there for that, actually.
You were actually there? I remember watching. The first song was 10 minutes, and it was exhausting just watching him because he rushed from, playing the vocoder and singing over to the piano and then to the upright bass. And he grabbed the mic and was going across the floor, enthusing the audience. And that was all within the first song, which lasted 10 minutes. So it must have been fairly hard work. Yeah,
that was sort of the first album, which is based on, I think, thank you very much. I agree. The first album is this huge sort of orchestral thing. So the Metropole Orchestra there. Oh.
It's very cool. Choir boy trying to be funky. It's
fair enough. He did start off in, I think he did one of the Britain operas at one point. So yeah, fair enough. And I think he does admit to that himself.
But there we are, a funky choir boy. I mean, there's a
it's a genre in itself.
It likes to be used plenty of times. I mean, yes, he is extraordinarily creative and so on. So we'll come back to that in the discussion later on, no doubt. Thank you, David, for nominating Jacob Collier's Djesse Volume 3. So, Carmen, we'll give you time to recover your breath, having just run virtually, obviously, from the virtual drum rehearsal. And we'll move to Sophie. Sophie, we'll move you into Speaker's Corner. So, Sophie, this is your opportunity to enthuse the eager public who are watching about your album of choice. So tell us what you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
Okay. So my choice is Parallel Lines by Blondie, which came out in 1979. I'm sad to say I was alive at that point. When first talking about this project with Dan, and he said, "Oh, what would you choose?" This album instantly popped into my head. And my kind of thoughts about it are not quite as cohesive as everybody else's. Mine's a bit more visceral and memories of a kid and all that kind of thing. I'm quite a faddy listener. I'll get into an album or whatever and I'll listen to it for a few months and then I'll kind of often never go back to it again. But this album, whenever I've owned it in seriums, so the very first time I came across it, my mum got it from a colleague. It was a 90-minute cassette, if you remember such things, Dan. A Memorex one, if I remember rightly, but other brands are available. And it had Blondie on one side, and then Ian Dury and the Blockheads' New Boots and Panties on the other side. Another classic album. But Blondie, for me, really kind of spoke to me in a funny way. That sounds a bit naff, but I had been a massive ABBA fan. And so I was kind of coming out of my ABBA chrysalis. And my memory was all the women that I'd come across in pop to that point had all been very coiffed and makeup and all that kind of thing. And, you know, whereas although Debbie Harry was often made up, she was quite kind of sullen, moody. And when you listen to this album, there's a lot of kind of ugly vocals and stuff like that. So it was a totally different image of a woman for me. That might sound a bit kind of silly, but anyway, that was a big deal for me. and there were multiple hits on this album. So you've got probably the most iconic one is Heart of Glass, which we'll probably come to a bit later, won't we, Carmen? But I mean, I think some of the songs could probably be described as fillers, but then I think there are some real classics, and it is post-punk or new wave, but there's aspects that I think are still quite punky in the sense that although I think they were a bit older, it's still got that feeling of teenage songs, but with a really dark twist. So one way or another, it's a bit about, I'm going to really get you, I'm going to make sure you're my boyfriend. And then Picture This is about a stalker. So there's all these really awful anyway, I just really love it. And the energy, so I've owned it on cassette. I then bought it on CD, and now obviously I stream it through Spotify. And every time I listen to it, I just want to jump up and, bop around the room every time without fail. So vote, people, vote.
Thank you, Sophie. Yes, you're right. It is. There's bags of energy about it, isn't there? And Heart of Glass. In fact, that was one of the more pleasant aspects of this particular panel, is that Heart of Glass is common to both your choice and Carmen's, as we'll hear later on. And so there was a nice kind of synergy between two choices that are sort of 40 odd years apart, a couple of years ago, and parallel lines being sort of early 70s and so on. So there was a nice overlap between two albums which you've chosen. So thank you very much, Sophie. So Carmen, having had a chance to draw breath, you into Speaker's Corner. Thank you very much for joining us. So yes, over to you for the soapbox. Tell us what you've chosen and why you've chosen it.
Cool. I picked Plastic Hearts by Miley Cyrus. When this idea came about and it was like, I'll pick your favorite album of all time or something, I don't know, I got a bit freaked out by that question. It's quite big. and so I thought, okay, well, what am I listening to the most just right now at the moment? And that's Plastic Hearts. Well, you were 18. I'm assuming that was 18 when Blondie was released, to that comment. So Plastic Hearts is Miley Cyrus's latest album. Came out in November of 2020. It's just really good. I really enjoy it. I feel like as an artist, obviously Miley Cyrus, started out as Hannah Montana and all that stuff. And then, she's had this sort of crazy growing up under the media and kind of been slandered at different points and all this stuff and trying to find herself and been a bit, she's married to this guy and she's cheated on him with this girl and, just always sort of messed around by the media and everything. And I think this album is really, I haven't really been a long time Miley Cyrus fan, but I thought I'd give it a listen. And it just feels really like she's found herself in a way, really. Like she's kind of, she started doing Heart of Glass and Zombie covers earlier in the year, kind of like dipping her toes into sort of rock, style and genre. And it really feels like she's like, yeah, this is me, and it's had a real great reception, which is amazing as well. But it's just a fabulous album. There's some amazing collaborations on it. She's got a song with Dua Lipa, who I'm also slightly obsessed with at the moment. Prisoner, that's a fantastic song. Then there's Joan Jett with a song called Bad Karma, which is like, I love it. It's really percussive with the textures and sort of breathing. Like, I don't know, it's a good one. And then Billy Idol just pops up, and it feels very like Halloween-y, a lot of themes of the night and stuff like that. And I mean, she released it in November. Part of me feels like maybe she wanted to have it released in October because it's definitely Halloween vibes. Like I'm going to be listening to it at Halloween. But yeah, and it's really good. And I remember, I think it was sort of at some point in December, I was like struggling to sleep, playing with a pen, right? And just sort of a bit restless because of, I don't know, the world and don't know how everyone else is feeling. But I was in my living room here in Canterbury, and it's like, Miley Cyrus has dropped a new album. So I just like listened to it at about 1 a.m. by myself with these like really big headphones. And it was just really like this like really kind of crazy, energetic, really fun, like something that happened to Miley, I think last year or the year before. She had a massive fire and like her whole house burnt down. And apparently a bunch of like her, she had a whole other album that she was trying to record or something. And then that got completely wiped. And so she's sort of, and obviously she was engaged to Liam Hemsworth, I think it's right. I don't know. But like, you know, then that fell apart. And then she's literally had her house burnt to the ground. And then this album's kind of sprung forth out of that. And yeah, it's really, really good. And there's some kind of country elements. Obviously she's, you know, got that background of her dad and like Dolly Parton as her godmother, you know, and stuff like that. And that's really nice. And there's the way it contrasts from sort of, you know, a country style ballad almost, and then Joan Jett, you know, is really nice. And she does talk a bit about in her final song, it's called Golden G-String of the main track, but she it's kind of talking about the media and talking about her life. And I think it's really honest. I think it's really bold. I just really like it and would definitely recommend it to anyone that hasn't listened to it or just thinks, oh, Miley Cyrus, Wrecking Ball. I don't know, like, you know, it's it's really good. Or Hannah Montana, you know. Yeah. So that's my choice, really.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carmen. And yes, you're right. I mean, there's lots of her personal life packed into that album, isn't it? And in some ways that makes it almost kind of slightly confessional. I mean, we were doing a listening party yesterday where we were going through Ray of Light by Madonna, and again it was about almost as though you were being taken on the singer's personal voyage of self-discovery and so on, and that kind of moving into maturity and the realization of I've got everything I wanted, and it actually wasn't very much, and you know, values come from elsewhere. So it's kind of albums that do that share a voyage or an odyssey of self-discovery with the listener are in some ways much more engaging and so on. So yes, your Miley Ray Cyrus, Miley Cyrus. I'm just Billy Ray Cyrus is. I have this theory that all music somehow relates to Achy Breaky Heart on some level, or the other one is Cotton Eye Joe. So I'm sure we could do a session where we distill our album choices into one or other of those, but that would be for a later session. So, I mean, thank you. So, yes, so we've had 4 quite different albums, haven't we, from everyone? And I think what's interesting, the sort of what I noticed when I was working through all 4 of them, and this is something that I wanted to sort of throw in open to people, is that it's 4 albums that have a very different way of beginning, don't they? So, you know, Hanging on the Telephone is a very kind of, you know, bold strut in from Blondie on Parallel Lines. Jacob Collier's the opening track of David, the album that you've chosen, is very fractal. It's very bitty. There's kind of lots of kind of cut and splice and lots of energy, and it sort of fizzes with so much creativity that it takes 52 seconds of nightmarish electricity before it then sort of bursts into the second track. And then obviously Night at the Opera begins with that very kind of rocky, very vindictive Death on Two Legs, isn't it? But it has that sort of traditional classical piano and so on. So it's a very kind of striding and yet very kind of acerbic beginning. And then Miley Cyrus album, What the Do I Know? You know, is again very much more kind of gritty and visceral and so on. So we had four very different ways of beginning an album. How did you each feel about? Was that something that struck you when you listened to it, or did you notice that there was that aspect to the way that the albums began?
Hadn't crossed my mind, I have to say. I was just, because I didn't know any of these albums. I mean, obviously I know Bohemian Rhapsody and the other single from that album, but I didn't know the album at all. I've never been a Queen fan. So I was trying to listen to all of the other albums with slightly unbiased open ears. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know the opening track to Blondie's album. Of course, it's a very famous track. And I love it. It's a great start. And like you were saying, Sophie, it just makes you want to get up and have a dance. For Queens, I mean, it's a bit it opens like a kind of heavy metal album, right? Death on Two Legs is furious and loud, and it kind of fits in with the other bands at the time releasing albums like Led Zeppelin and Kiss and Aerosmith. But in that way, it's kind of deceptive, because then it goes into, let me get this right, Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon is the second track, which is like almost the polar opposite. It's like really kind of dandy track, like dancing a bounce. It's lovely. But yeah, it has like a really kind of strong beginning. And then Miley's new album, again, I've never listened to her stuff before because it's just totally not my bag, but in this direction, going into rock, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And yes, that's right. What you were saying about the stylistic elements of there's that wonderful. It feels very English. The tracks, you know, lazing on a Sunday afternoon, and the other. There's a real kind of, Dandy Track's a great description, isn't it? Seaside Rendezvous and Good Company as well later on. Yeah. They're very, as you say, they have a real kind of rakish, dandy strut to them that feels very, very English about it. You know, very, Sunday promenade on the beach with a, not quite spats and a parasol, but certainly that sort of, certainly that dandy.
Sorry.
So yes, and that's one of the things that's very striking about the Queen album, I think, is the way that it does move between those kind of different songs, and you've got that very kind of very very gutsy opening, and then 2 minutes later you're into a lazing on a Sunday afternoon and so on. Carmen, your choice obviously features a cover of a song from Sophie's album. Did you kind of did you listen to the Blondie track having known about Sophie's choice?
I know not Plastic Hearts, Jar of Heart, no. Hearts of Glass. Oh my god, too many hearts. Oh my gosh. No, it's like an extra on the album, but before she actually released the album, she'd released that cover along with Zombie. And it was, I think it's interesting. You can definitely see how people like Blondie have influenced her into it. But I also think if you've heard her cover of it, it's I think she does it with a real chesty, really brings up her power to it in a way that Blondie has quite she has all this grit and power, but she's got this softness in her voice, which I think
ethereal.
Is so, and so it's interesting hearing the two sort of the interpretations of it. I'm not going to say it's better than the original, because I feel like originals are thing, but I definitely think it's really interesting seeing how that influences her and how she makes it her own with that kind of grit with her voice that's very like kind of raw for her, and it's apparently she smoked a lot of weed, so yeah.
That's bound to have an effect on the quality of your vocals.
I think the vocal is the only thing that is noticeably different in the cover. I think ostensibly it's even got the same kind of intro, and although it says it's live on the album, I don't know whether it is a live version. It sounds terribly well mixed if it is live.
You can see it on YouTube, the live performance of it.
Yeah, it's great, and you can hear the backing musicians are rocking out quite nicely. But I don't know, I've always got a thing. I think unless you're going to do something with a cover, if it's not going to be significantly different, I'm always a bit skeptical about them. But that's me.
Fair enough.
And it's the same with our cover of the Cranberry Zombie. You know, Dolores, what's her face? I can't even remember her surname. You know, it's ostensibly. I mean, that is one of my largest observations of that album. Is I think the thing I come away from Miley Cyrus's album is what an extraordinary singer is. Her vocals really carry the album. When I maybe some of the songwriting, etc., is a little bit middle of the road or a bit ordinary. I know, sorry.
I agree.
Yeah, sorry, controversial.
Sorry, Carmen.
Wow. Wow, guys. Brilliant.
Her fisticuffs have started.
I know, sorry. But that, yeah, I mean, that's just me. That's yeah.
And I mean, one of the things that we touched on earlier is the with regard to the album that David, that you chose, the Jacob Collier, is that it feels like he's got so much creativity just pouring out of him that sometimes he can't help himself. You know, there's just so much going on in that album. It took several listens for me to actually really get a handle on it, because it was so industrious and so busy, and he's just such a fountain of creativity and so on, that it sometimes it's almost, there's almost, for me, there was almost as though there was too much going on for me to concentrate on, because he had so very many ideas. But I mean, he is just a supremely creative individual, isn't it? How did you sort of feel about kind of, you know, when you were listening to it in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, personally, that's one of the things that I really love about it. Is that, like, it's like watching a TV show. Like, I could happily just sit there and listen to it from the first second all the way through, and there's so many like twists and turns for it. As I was saying earlier, there's like, it's so dense, but there are so many sort of relaxing moments, because it goes through, it has like the epilogue at the beginning, and then you sort of hear the motifs through the first two tracks that sort of explode in, and then you get Time Alone With You, which sort of sits back a bit and has some like Dilla grooves, so it sort of sits back on the beat, and you can sort of relax for a few songs, which is quite nice. And then, yeah, it just sort of, I find the way that it balances like the quite wide variety of tracks is really effective, and it means that it's not too tiring to listen to. But it still manages to pack in, as you're saying, like all the creativity that he has. That's why it's really effective.
I found when I first listened to it, because of course I was listening to it for this project, I was really actively listening to it. I found it quite hourly exhausting, if I'm really honest, almost like tuning a radio. I know that's obviously an effect, but I wondered whether it might work better for first listening, just not quite background music, but you know what I mean, where you're then just picking up the melody a bit more, and then you can go into a bit more deeper later. Later listening, I think, to go in first, like headphones on, really concentrating, was a bit woo.
I know, that's what I've always struggled with Jacob Collier. I just find it very overwhelming, because there is so much. I mean, I love mixing genres, you know, that kind of exciting element, and having a lot going on, and layers and polyrhythms and all that crazy harmonies. They're all my bag. But I don't know, there's something about, maybe I need to do like Sophie suggested, have it like a gentle ease into the world of his music, rather than focusing on it too much.
Yeah. But there were, listening out for sort of, we talked about the sort of Heart of Glass that links Sophie's album and Carmen's album. There was a moment where I was listening to the Jacob Collier, and there's towards the end, there's is it the final track, Sleeping on My Dreams, which is a nice kind of pop way to finish it. But there's that bit where he has the chorus. There's a very English mock chorus singing something like my bed is all my pleasure, or my bed is made of feathers, and it's at that moment. And I thought, having listened to the Queen album that Amy had suggested, I suddenly thought, gosh, there's almost a sort of nod to Queen in the way it had that very rock opera chorus suddenly appearing in the middle of a pop tune. Yeah,
it's really interesting. And he actually created a playlist recently on Spotify that has all of the influences, and it's like 100 hours long or something ridiculous, but it has all of these things through that you can listen through. And having listened to all his albums, you can really pick out the points and stuff that he's used, and it sort of adds an extra dimension to it, which I think is quite powerful, because you pick up on, and there's like classical motifs and stuff like Queen, and like all these amazing bands that he's managed to wire into his own stuff. Yeah.
There's some real homage kind of sound worlds going on in several of the tracks. You're like, oh, you know,
exactly.
Perfect pitch. I'm going, I'm sure that's even the same key. Although I'm really sorry. Does anybody, David, I think his lyrics are pretty, I think with
Fair
his
enough.
kind of instrumentation, no, but the lyrics are just not, that's not his forte, I don't think. And I think if he got together, I was one of the things I wrote, if he got together with an excellent lyricist, I think it would be amazing.
Yeah.
So
That's an
I look
interesting
forward
point.
to that project. Dear Jacob.
Yeah. Because he has done some, like we were talking about covers a minute ago, like he has done some amazing covers of different bands. But I mean, I wouldn't say it's as bad as that, but I think it isn't one of the things that I focus on.
I cheated with all the albums, and I went on to Genius and looked at all the lyrics as I was listening to them, because it just kind of helps you dive in and get what it's about. And and I'm afraid Jacob definitely was the lowest other thing. Blondie might only
Miley again.
I'm not convinced Blondie wouldn't be the next one up, because some of those lyrics, I mean, it's kind of like dark teenage pop punk kind of stuff. I mean, I'm aware it's not I didn't pick it because I thought it was musically awesome. I picked it because it's important and I still love it. And, you know, hard to put into words, isn't it, when something you've had a companion through your life's journey like that.
But that's what's interesting to hear, isn't it? What each of these albums means to each of you, and why you've chosen them. I mean, yes, there was a moment where I was listening to the Jacob Collier and early on in the first track, not the intro, where he's spitting lyrics extraordinarily quickly, and all of a sudden I thought, did he just mention apple tree? Did he say the words apple tree? And I had to go back and check, because I thought, that's not what I was expecting. Something as ordinary. I mean, again, slightly English.
Yeah,
not very urban.
But he is. No.
But I mean, at the same time, you've got that very dazzling creativity going on, haven't you? I think one of the things that Sophie mentioned, I think, when we were sort of talking about this before we came on air, was that some of it reminded you of Prince. Is that right, Sophie?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Particularly the Sign of the Times album, things like Housequake and kind of, what was the other one? You Got the Look and things. There's a real strong feeling of that underneath it, yeah. But I mean, not, and that, I don't mean that in a negative way, because it strikes me that Jacob Collier would probably be one of the first to say, oh, yeah, that's a nod. It felt like an homage rather than a kind of pastiche or copying with acknowledging. I would never say that. No, I have to say I really enjoyed this album. It took a few more listens, but it might be one that stays on my own kind of Spotify playlists.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm going to get Sophie's vote now.
Yes, there's that issue, isn't there? Are we each going to vote, or are we abstaining from the voting process and leaving that entirely over to the viewers at home?
Oh,
shall we just vote
just
for
all
ourselves?
Vote for our own? Yeah.
I assume
give Parallel Lines 10 out of 10.
Do you? Wow, really surprising that.
Yes, because I mean, I was working through the Miley Cyrus album and thinking, I kind of, have I heard this before? It sounds a bit like I might have heard this before, but I wasn't sure. You know, much of my pop listening these days comes from what I hear in the car as I'm driving my daughter and my son to school in the morning, and on the way back, what's on their playlist and so on. But when it got to Prisoner, I knew immediately that I knew that song already, and I'd heard it before, because it's particularly striking, isn't it? It nags, that falling melodic line. It's very insistent, and it nags you the whole time, isn't it? And it was very. I immediately realised, yes, I have heard this piece before, and I knew what it was. Was that a standout track for you, Carmen, when you first heard it?
I think it sounds a lot like physical. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that it sort of. I think it definitely. Yeah, I think Prisoner. That's actually the song that I heard first, because I've been like a bit obsessed with Dua Lipa in this past year, and obviously she was on and I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a listen. And I think, yeah, the kind of chant of it definitely sucks you in and then it gets stuck in your head the rest of the day. It's definitely an earworm, but I really enjoy that. But I've listened to that one. It's funny because that's like when you find a new album and there's something that jumps out at you, but then there's the ones that you don't listen to it or focus on it as much at the moment. So I think at the moment I really am enjoying Joan Jett's Bad Karma stuff at the moment, later on in the album. But Prisoners is definitely really good. And I think Dua Lipa as well at the moment is really going places as well with her album. So I might almost pick that one, but then I thought, well, actually, I am listening to Miley more at the moment. But no, very good stuff.
And to any of you, really, are you influenced by the artists with whom your particular pop idol collaborates? I mean, we've talked about there's Billy Idol is on there, and Dua Lipa, and so on. I don't think Queen collaborated quite so readily, did they? They were so colossal.
David Bowie. They did David Bowie.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
And what a person to do a collaboration with.
Yes, that's right. If you've got to work with somebody, David Bowie is fairly high up on the list, isn't it? So,
well, yeah, especially because he's dead now.
Although with
limited edition.
That's right, yeah, and the amount of recorded material that some people have, like Prince, for example, it doesn't stop them releasing albums posthumously, does it? The stable keeps on providing.
That's right. And I also just put a vote in for, I think, hands down, the best lyric out of all the albums definitely is on Queen. I absolutely love it. Can I get my hands on your grease gun? I absolutely nutted myself.
Is that from I'm in love with my car?
I was like, genius. Sorry, I just thought I put that in.
So whilst you're loyal to Blondie, you have a nod towards the lyrical genius at that particular point.
Yeah, Roger Taylor, that's right. I was really interested. I mean, another one, this is one of my other things, is I quite like it when bands have a definite voice and a sound. And obviously the Queen album is not cohesive in that way. I think you can really hear it's been written by multiple people. But I mean, I still really enjoyed it, which normally I'd be a bit like,
Yeah, I think it's to do with, I don't know, like how they write, and also a huge amount to do with the production. Because if the sounds are all there, they had a wonderful moment. I was watching the documentary specifically on this album, in their kind of nostalgic songs. I think "Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon" was the one they were talking about, where a lot of the production was like really physical, not digital at all, and they channeled out the vocals. They wanted to get a megaphone effect. They channeled the vocals out through a pair of like rubbishy headphones, put it in a tin can, and put a microphone in the tin can, and played it and recorded it to get a megaphone effect.
It reminded me of Temperance 7. Does anybody remember? I mean, it's before my time. Dan, Temperance 7. They were a kind of trad-y 60s band that did kind of trad jazz, but the lead singer went through oh, you railway station, like that. I
think they mentioned that.
The minute I heard that, I went, oh, that sounds like Temperance 7. Yeah. So,
Yes, that's right. So lots of those kind of 40s and 50s dance bands and the sort of the contemporary incarnations of them have somebody singing through a megaphone or a bullhorn, don't they? So you get that very compressed, very tight sound and so on. Yes, and it's very effective, isn't it? Lazing on a Sunday afternoon. It certainly has that particular striking character. In part, comes from the way the vocals have been treated, and it's a wonderful example of how the creativity that goes on in the studio is often just as important as the creativity that the musicians bring in the instruments that they're playing or the way they're singing. So many albums like Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, the Beatles albums, have all been about the experimentation in the studio, and the studio becoming as much a part of the production and as much an instrument in it as the lineup of the band themselves. And although I think Jacob Collier wins here for the dizzying amount of studio creativity that's demonstrated.
Don't you think he's a great poster boy for kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say he looks like a geek, but I mean, he's so not kind of studio or A&R men or publicity have not got anywhere near him,
No, he rocks up in his Crocs. And it's just
he wears Crocs.
Phenomenal. Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah. Yeah. And he'll just sort of show up and...
He's such an antithesis of all that kind of stuff, which is just, great, I think, And
does the fact that he wear Crocs also influence your vote here, David, or is it just
big
the
time.
music?
I mean, it was the leading reason. I mean, I listened to his music afterwards.
Fantastic. Well, I need to be enthusing the viewers at home, the watchers, to start voting in your comments. By all means, start voting for the album. Who's persuaded you with their rhetoric? Who has convinced you that their album should be the one that becomes our album of the week this week? Just a quick reminder of what they are. So David's nomination is Djesse Volume 3 by Jacob Collier. Sophie's trying to persuade you to vote for Blondie's Parallel Lines. Carmen is asking you to vote for Miley, Cyrus and Plastic Hearts, whilst Amy's nomination is Queen at Night of the Opera. So wherever you're watching in the comments, by all means, let us know which of those you would like to vote for. One of our viewers was talking about how old they were when Blondie's Parallel Lines came out. I was 4.
I was 9.
Remarkable. And that's one of the other things about this episode was just the sheer breadth across the decades that we were covering from Queen.
Very old. Very young.
Absolutely. So yes, wherever you are, vote now, as they say, as we bring the show to a close, so we can see who is likely, whilst we're live on air, to be out in front with their vote. I'm being resolutely impartial chairing this. I couldn't possibly say who I think should win, but it's been interesting to hear from each of you about why the album matters to you and what's important, and the stylistic diversity that we've encountered, and even within single albums, but across all the albums as a whole, has I think made this a really interesting exercise. And it certainly took me into some listening corners that I wouldn't have ventured into without sort of the excuse, if you like. And hopefully for the viewers at home, it's done the same as well. So is anyone voting out there? Perhaps they're all saving it until we've gone off air, and then there'll be a furious storm.
If they need any final help, I believe Djesse Volume 3 got nominated for Album of the Year this year at the Grammys.
Oh, right. Okay.
Not just coming from me.
It got nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys. Is that
Apparently
right?
Well, this isn't the Grammys, okay? This isn't the Grammys.
So yeah, we're working on a much higher level. This is.
Does this panel show not have the weight of the Grammys? Are we not comparable?
maybe in a few weeks, I think we'll catch up.
Oh, here we go. There's one. Somebody's got a vote.
People are starting to vote, are they?
There we go.
The Queen. Lovely.
Queen, there we are.
Oh.
Amy, there's one in the bag for you already.
Brilliant.
I wonder how many people have listened to the albums beforehand. I mean, I listened to all your choices 3 times through at least. And I had to listen to 01 again. Yeah. I just, I thought I did it at the weekend and stuff. So, yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I love listening to new music.
Yeah, I was doing the same. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to them all. But as Dan was saying, like it's really interesting to go through and hear all the different corners of music that you may not necessarily go through.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
It was cool.
That's right. Yes, it's about opening your ears to new kind of sonic possibilities and new avenues, isn't it? And and whether you like it or not, it's still the fact that we went across and listened to it and so on. It's just widened our kind of perceptions and our listening just that little bit further. So, well, given that we've only one person has shared their vote with us, it does look as though Amy, during in this live part of the voting, it looks like we can possibly declare you the winner. Which,
congratulations.
So so Amy, how the first show, inaugural show, and it looks like you've persuaded someone to vote for your album, and therefore we must class you the winner.
It might be slightly biased, in fact, because the album will have been introduced to me by my parents, and that is a vote from one of my
parents. Don't give the game away.
Oh my gosh.
But in the next hour, it's all to play for.
In the next hour, it'll be just a deluge of Amy's relatives similarly all voting. So when we come off air, we will now all be frantically messaging our friends and relations saying, right, we need to stem the Amy Tokel tide.
I think all my friends and family just say sod off.
Well, Kate, if you're still watching, thank you very much for helping us and for elevating Amy's choice to Album of the Week. And thank you to my guests, to David, to Carmen, to Sophie, and to our inaugural winner, Amy, for coming along and sharing their choices with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been good fun to widen our listening and to go and explore some different albums as well. Do join us again next time when we'll have similarly people in the virtual studio battling for your votes. But in the meantime, stay safe and well wherever you are. And we look forward to seeing you next time. From me and from the music team, thank you very much.